Welcome to the Everyman Commentary Podcast. I am your host, Auguste and Evan, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Evan McClanahan, senior contributor to the Everyman and host of the podcast, Theology on Air, as well as Dr. Adam Ellwanger, a professor of rhetoric at the University of Houston and a contributor to a wide array of conservative publications and writers of many books. With Valentine's Day upon us, I thought it might be a good idea for us to happily married men to take a look at the dating scene and what it might portend for the future. I can't say that this will be the most uplifting conversation, considering the many, many problems afflicting today's singles. I think it still does some good to bring up the issues and consider constructive solutions. We'll also take a gander at some disturbing numbers coming out of Europe about church attendance and faith in God. It looks like it's up to the good old US of A to save Western Civ. And finally, if we have the time, we'll talk about the Winter Olympics and what Evan and Adam think about this new crop of American athletes who think it's cool to disavow the country they happen to be representing. China, you can have these turncoats. But first, let's start with the theme of today's show, romantic love. Adam, if I remember correctly, I think your doctorate is the art of love, which makes you an official love doctor. What is your observation of dating culture today, and what do you think the problem is, if any?
Well, I think that there's many problems, but I think that the main one is the internet. In 1999, I walked into a library where I worked and saw a young woman shelving books and went up and talked to her. And we spent the next couple of years getting to know each other, and we've been together for 26 years now. And I think that the beautiful thing about that time, before life was lived online, is that you got to know someone by being with them. Now I think that, men and women, when they meet, will research each other and find out more or less, not even a real image of this person, but an exaggerated image that you carry this kind of baggage into the relationship to start that wouldn't have been there 20 years ago. And I feel bad. I talked to my class about this at the university this week. And
You too, huh?
I was thinking about my wife, and I told them how I met her, and one student came up to me after class and said, that just couldn't happen today. And I think that he is right, sadly. And I think that the medium is the problem.
Well, okay, that's a can of worms there. I hear the same thing, Adam. I think it's kind of fun to talk about just relationships and kind of get a finger on the pulse of what's going on. And yeah, my students are the same way. It's like if you approach a girl and express interest or ask them to go have boba tea or something which to me seems innocuous, or even just like, oh, do you want to go see the football game? That's creepy. That's weird. But I don't know how much of this is cope and excuse making. I know it's scary to ask a girl out and maybe get turned down or just whatever, but I don't know how much of it maybe is true. Maybe it is creepy. And now there's a new thing. So let's say you ask a girl out and, she says no or whatever, but it doesn't stop there. Then she goes on, Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. She goes on social media or texts her friends saying, oh my gosh, this weirdo, Adam, just asked me to go have coffee or something. Whoa. And then everybody goes online and makes fun of, the kid that asked the girl out. I don't understand it. It's well, why is that a bad thing? But again, I don't know how much of this is exaggerated. I don't know how much of this is just kind of okay, this is the impression you get if you're relying too much on social media to socialize. Or if it's real. Evan, what do you think? Do you agree with Adam's take? The internet's just kind of ruined dating and we're screwed?
Well, in many ways, yeah. But I actually, was thinking of something like pornography as being a major contributor towards ruining it, given the unrealistic expectations, given the format of online matchmaking that convinces people that there's always another option and another one and another one. And I saw something in the last week where it basically said that, women want someone who's like 6 feet tall and right in this age bracket. And basically they said, well, how many men fit that category? And it's less than 1%, right? So someone in their mid-20s who makes good money, 6 feet tall, a 7 out of 10 or better, right? I mean, it's basically unrealistic. So somehow we've ended up with these unrealistic expectations, and I think that because our what do you call it when you're hungry? Your appetite. Our appetites in the modern world are always being quenched. We're not like ever hungry enough to like go let a 6 take us out for boba tea. We're gonna hold out for the 8. I was talking to a student, pretty young lady, do outreach to college students here in Houston, and and she just basically said, yeah, I'm just not interested in guys, at all. I'm just not interested in I'm not interested in anything. And I'm going, how can you be 18 years old and like not be interested in that? Is it something in the water? Is the internet, is porn rotting our brain? Is it like we have no dopamine left? Is it unrealistic expectations? I mean, I guess it's maybe a little bit of all that. I just think we need basically like boredom, a little boredom and a little desperation, and those hormones will start working again. It's like, well, he's not gorgeous or she's not gorgeous, but neither am I.
I have to say that I agree that pornography is a big problem, and I've talked to my students about this too. Is that they've taken surveys of the age at which the average American loses their virginity. And when I ask students, like, okay, since the 90s, do you think that age has risen or fallen? They routinely say, and I think that this makes sense, they say, well, surely it's fallen. But in fact, it's gotten older. And, not to be too crass on the Valentine's Day episode, but I think that part of this is that when I was a teenager in the 90s, pornography was very hard to come by compared to today. And what that meant is if you're a 16 or 17-year-old teenage male and you want to see naked chicks, you had to figure out how to get chicks naked. And I think that
good setup there, right?
that's what's been lost. Is like I honestly think that the major issue with pornography is it's sort of disincentivize learning how to relate to female peers on just a human level.
Well,
it's always.
I wrote about this, and I want to be able to talk about it a little bit with y'all. So, here's my thought, okay? And I'm trying to get above just some of these issues like pornography or weird sense of entitlement, feminism, guys, just the internet, the influence of online. I mean, obviously that's been a problem. But I feel like, the whole cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to get people to marry, okay? And I think that's something we've kind of lost. And this kind of came to me as I read Pride and Prejudice and Jude the Obscure at the same time. I was doing the audiobook for Pride and Prejudice, and I was reading Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. They're both about marriage, okay? One is very optimistic. Pride and Prejudice really, values marriage. It's all about marriage and making a good partnership. And Jude the Obscure is about how marriage ruins you and everything's terrible and tragic because it's Thomas Hardy. But it made me think that, well, the real missing element, like why does Jude the Obscure, kind of this farm boy, he wants to be an academic, and he just kind of gets caught up in these relationships, and mainly it has to do with this class. But he has no village, And so he's basically just having to navigate without any knowledge or consciousness, and he gets caught up in these traps, and nothing is very well defined, and eventually it just leads to tragedy. Whereas, right, Pride and Prejudice, there are many characters, and it takes a whole family, And so the main characters are all part of families. Everything is within the context of family and friends and socializing. All these people do is just sit in parlors and talk, or go on walks and talk, go to balls and talk, and write letters. So I think when you look at like the modern typical, young person, but not even just young people, it's older people too, they don't have any context in which to meet people. And so they're forced to kind of rely on, Tinder or whatever dating app, which is terrible, by the way. The dating apps is just like prostitution services. It's bad. If you ever talk to people who have to rely on it, you might be better off if it's like a religious or Christian kind of dating app, maybe. But what you really need is you need a community, to introduce you to people, to create safe third spaces or kind of. Do you know the idea of a third space or whatever?
Yeah.
Like you have work,
Starbucks.
you have home, and then there's the third space where you're normally supposed to have your associations and meet with friends and stuff, which used to be, more
country
prevalent.
balls in England.
Exactly, or promenades and all that. And so we don't seem to have that. And that's what I'm seeing. It's like, and the kids who do manage to find dates and they still kind of do the romantic stuff like homecoming dances and the like, they're usually part of organizations that serve as a third space, and they provide that safe context by which they become acquainted with the opposite sex, and they can approach them with a little bit more confidence than, hey, I've been staring at you from across the room in so-and-so's class, and I think it might be cool if we talk or something, which is going to come off as, creepy or whatever. So I think it takes a village, and I think our village has kind of disappeared, What do you think about that?
So basically communism.
Communitarianism.
Just kidding.
I don't know. I mean,
no, absolutely. I believe in. I think we need to essentially be arranging marriages, and I'm not even joking. I think that the homeschool community, probably kind of does some of this a little bit already. There are stories, Auguste in our family, of basically arranged marriages. Actually, of our cousins over in Tennessee.
Oh yeah. Well, they're different.
Well, it's the kind of off the grid homeschool world, and if you can basically at this point in a kind of post-Christian, postmodern world, if you can if there are two kids who are like Christian and like in the homeschool space, like they agree with that kind of like intuitively, like they're gonna have almost everything they need in common to like make something work. And so, I have someone in mind for one of my kids, absolutely, and the mom knows about it and is on board. So, but I agree. Actually, interestingly, there is a dance group that meets at my church, like twice a month.
Is it the swing dancing thing? Do they do swing dancing?
No, it's not swing dancing. It's like contra
dancing. I know the homeschoolers like swing dancing.
Yeah, but I have contra dancing, folk dancing, and English country dancing, just like they do in Pride and Prejudice. So, I think that like young conservatives need to seek those sorts of wholesome activities out and flood them and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like high schools have still tried to preserve the dance, or they still have kind of social events, and they do kind of fill in some of that gap of just kind of a local meeting place. Colleges, I don't know. I mean, I know Adam, maybe you could speak to this. College should be the place where they do meet their spouse. I mean, they're adults at that point. They have a pretty good idea of what the future portends, and are there spaces for people to meet each other and go on dates or anything like that? I don't know.
I'm on a strange campus to answer that question.
Okay.
Campus is largely a commuter campus, but I think that there are these opportunities, but I feel like people don't take advantage of them. And I think that there is a real phenomenon that you guys were just describing, that there's this sense that there's always something better, and that at the moment that this thing loses its luster for me, I'm out, right? That is a sign that this can't work. And I think in the past, that probably wasn't true. I also think there's a million different ways, to initiate contact with young women. When I told you about the library where I met my wife, we had a nice first conversation, but I felt weird about asking for girls' phone numbers because I thought that in doing so, there was some pressure to provide it to me, even if they didn't want to do it. And so I gave her my phone number and said, hey, I'd like it if you'd call me. And, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, every time that I saw her, I mentioned, hey, when are you going to give me a call? And, after about 3 weeks, she did. But she still gives me a hard time about this. She says that was weird. And, I was just trying to face. If you didn't want to talk to me, I'm not going to, get into your business. So I think it's just a larger sort of breakdown of interpersonal relations. Not even men and women necessarily. It's that people don't know how to talk to strangers.
I remember my journalism teacher in high school. He told his story of how he met his wife. He got in a car wreck with her. He rear-ended her, and she was really mad at him and wanted to kill him. But they had to work out. And it wasn't that day, but they had to work out the insurance and the getting it fixed and all that, and they ended up getting married. So I don't know, maybe we should run people over? I don't know. See someone really attractive, run them over, break a leg or two, and then help them heal. Maybe that's a whole plan. Got to think outside the box here, August.
Good, Evan, yeah. But I mean, well, I think there's something to be said about having the ability to talk. This is something I see. I mean, I think Adam and I see it just as teachers, just basic communication. I give my students, life lessons. I love giving my life lessons. And one of the things I like to do to make conversation, I say, use this acronym, FORD, F-O-R-D. F is friends and family. O is occupation. R is recreation. D is dreams. So these are appropriate, pretty, low stakes questions, right? How's your family, or who do you hang out with, or how's Alistair in his baseball game, or you say, people like to talk about their jobs, oh, how's your job going, or how's being a student, or recreation, oh, okay, how's your sport, or whatever you're doing, and then dreams, well, what are you hoping to do? And these are fine questions, and actually do kind of yield some substantial answers to help you understand the other person. And then I tell them to avoid the topics rape. So the acronym RAPE, which means so R is religion.
R stands for rape.
No, okay. R stands for religion.
Talk about that.
Unfortunately, A stands for abortion. P stands for politics, and E is for economics. Okay, the topics that we like to talk about. So, and I say, well, because that's the thing. If you talk to people and they're having a hard time finding a date or whatever, they kind of get mad about small talk. They don't want to talk about Ford. They want to talk about, rape or pear, if you want to pick a nicer acronym. They want to talk about the big stuff, the stuff that's a little bit more abstract, and stuff that maybe they talk about online. Politics or economics or whatever. And
or the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping.
No, yeah, golly, okay, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, and this is to me, this seems like just very humdrum kind of advice, that you probably just naturally figure out anyway. But for them, it's like a revelation. And I have plenty of these kind of cliche, kind of common sense advice about approaching people and talking to them. And they think wow, you must have been a super popular kid. I'm like, not really. I mean, I was pretty nerdy. But you know what's funny though? That's another thing. Among my peers when I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of girlfriends. I mean, I would say I had 3 serious relationships and then my wife. Okay. But for Zoomers, for the younger generation, that's a lot. They think, wow, you're a player. I'm like, that was nothing. I mean, I wish it were more, and I got turned down quite often for reasons I will never know. But, I mean, but for them, I mean, it's just even just one, man. I mean, it saddens me.
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit.
Well, August,
okay,
we haven't talked about looks maxing yet, and I think that's a big part of this.
Well, okay, yeah. How so?
No, I'm just making fun of this claviclear person who's like all of a sudden important. He gets mogged, yes. Anyway, it's just this looks maxing thing. It's just all so bizarre. I don't know. It's just the world is just so fake now, And I guess, look for someone who's wanting to live in reality with you. You'll be a lot happier anyway. But no, carry on. I was just making fun of that.
Well, okay, I'm going to pivot to Adam here.
Yeah.
Well, Evan thinks about his jawline or something.
Yeah.
So something I kind of put forward to you, and I mean, again, it's kind of our wheelhouse is the messaging, right? And I look at Pride and Prejudice. It's been kind of a perennial favorite, and I think a lot of women like it. But I mean, I think guys can appreciate it too. It's just kind of this. It's a model of romantic love to me, of courtship, of the kind of conversations and concerns you should have, and it's illuminating. If you haven't been exposed to anything like that, which you're not, as a young person, and maybe even as you get older. So I want to know, I mean, I look at our pop culture today. I think a lot of this is informed by pop culture. I think it's informed by our movies, our TV shows, Clavicle, the influencer guy, all this kind of crap. And, I think we moved away from the rom-com, which we used to have a lot of, like romantic comedies and or just romance stories. And now I think a lot of it has been replaced by empowerment stories, survival stories, social justice stories, and models of wielding power and kicking butt. Do you think it would do anything to recover some of these kind of romantic stories about love and marriage? Or has Gen Z, and maybe even most millennials, have they just become too cynical for us to return to this kind of like past time where, romantic heterosexual love was actually a good thing?
Well, I think that would do enormous good if we had a larger cultural movement around showcasing that. But I think what superseded that is, you kind of alluded to it, is self-satisfaction, right? Am I happy? And I think that many heterosexual relationships today, that's the standard. Am I happiest that I've been right now? And if not, then again, that's a sign of deficiency. And I think that, it's a very, very powerful idea that the aim of a relationship, an intimate relationship with another person, is to make you happy. And that's really what we have to defeat. And that's not to say that, the right relationship will not make you happy. It should, but to set that as the ultimate goal, sort of personal satisfaction, self-actualization, these are unrealistic goals. And so as long as you're entering sort of the world of romantic relationships with this idea, it's doomed to fail because, there's frankly no one that can do that work for you. There's people who can do it better than others, but you can't enter into these things with the mindset that that's the purpose or the function of this association. And so I think like the good thing about romantic comedies, and I'll stop in just a second, is that they almost always, the narrative arc shows that there's some dissatisfaction, that there's hiccups, that, this doesn't always work right away. And, I think that probably the reason that there's so much fewer romantic comedies is that today the hiccup is like, well, this isn't going to work. And then there's no plot.
Well, I mean, the way that relationships are treated in today's entertainment, again, they're kind of hopeless, right? I mean, you have things like, I'm trying to think, Euphoria? That's not a popular show anymore. I mean, you got these epics, like, I don't know, the Dune movies, or, I mean, I don't think Marvel's popular anymore, and Marvel never really dabbled into much romance either. It was weird. I mean, again, you're kind of like, I mean, I guess maybe Netflix puts out like these just kind of disposable romantic comedies, with Lindsay Lohan or something. I don't know if that's the extent of it, or I don't know if you had to go outside of American culture. I mean, if I'm thinking about it, I think some Korean shows probably do romance a lot better now. Or maybe some other cultures that, create entertainment, or Bollywood, maybe that's where you have to go now if you just want a straightforward love story. But
I blame the gays.
What?
I blame the gays. I mean, like, every show has to have some gay element in it, even though it's a small percentage of the population. I mean, like, we can't even normalize men and women having the hots for each other. I mean, that even that most basic concept is like off the table. Whereas when I grew up, everything was exaggerated. I mean, even like 1980s movies that I want my kids to watch, I'm like, let me go on IMDb and check out the parental whatever, because even PG-13 stuff was like very risque, right? But like the men were hyper masculine, right? Big muscles and all that, and the women were like barely clothed, and they were like hot, and it was just like sizzle, like on the screen, like all the time. And now it's like, it just seems like nobody's interested, very much. There's no sex and sexiness. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is basically burying yourself. That's it. That's all anyone's got left. So, I mean, I think we should blame the feminism. I mean, I know it's a cliche to do that, but I mean, it's got to be named, right? I mean, there's something that's fundamentally unsexy to a man about a woman who, wants to take charge and all of that as well. Also, in terms of stories, my understanding is that in the old days, okay, you had a comedy or a tragedy. Like, say, think Shakespeare, right? You had a comedy or a tragedy. And the comedy always ends in a marriage, and the tragedy always ends in a funeral. And I also think about like the Hays Code. I had to just look this up. I'd forgotten the name of it. But that ended in 1968 in Hollywood. But that mandated that the protagonist had to side with the good. Okay, that they could not participate in adultery, that the good guy essentially had to win. Well, that's why we think old movies are kind of boring, because they're not very morally complex, right? I mean, now we want anti-heroes. Now we want self-referential irony, which is what Marvel has become, which is why it's so dumb now, right? We can't just tell a story, which is what stories used to be. Stories used to be, live this way or bad things will happen. That's the purpose of a tragedy. Or live this way and good things will happen. That's the purpose of a comedy. But we don't want that anymore. And even I admit I'm bored by that. And that's why the rom-com to me is like, I have no interest in watching a rom-com. I mean, I joke with my wife. I'm like, I already know how it's going to end. He's going to end up in a fast car trying to get to the airport before the plane takes off. So what do I do with that? But as I get older and we encounter the sorts of problems we're talking about, I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'm not interested, but maybe it's what we need,
Well, but I think what makes a good rom-com, romantic comedy, or comedy is that surrounding context. I want to return to that idea. It takes a village. And I mean, if you think of any kind of well-beloved movie, like Pride and Prejudice is not really about really the relationship.
The Keira Knightley version or the BBC 1990s version?
We go with the BBC, okay. They're not kissing in the rain and with, Hunkalicious and Keira Knightley or whatever. But no, Pride and Prejudice, I'm talking about the book, okay? And it's about that whole lifestyle, okay? It's just so civilized, and it's the repartee between, I mean, it's not even about like just, I mean, marriage is obviously the main kind of thing that brings it all together, but it's just that whole society. And I think
it's a negotiation.
The
whole movie is a negotiation, and everyone has a say. The mother has a say. The dad has a say.
Personalities too, though.
Yes.
And they have and their deeper goals to go with this. And it's like by having these kind of like challenges, like to pair up with somebody, it's like they need to know themselves a little bit better. They need to have more experiences of their own. They need to kind of like reevaluate their relationships with their sisters and and their mom and their parents, and they kind of look at it in a new light. And that's what gives the complexity. The complexity is not going to come from just kind of moral ambiguity. I mean, I think that's not in question, but maybe not the ends, but the means, okay? And maybe even just the world building, okay? I mean, so there's three elements to storytelling: is world building, character development, and plot. Okay, and you're kind of complaining, well, the plot of a rom-com is pretty straightforward and not all that interesting. And even the character development, you can't stray too much unless you want to be risque or, well, not these days, but like do something, flip the genders or whatever. But no, I mean, I think the world building element is still like kind of a neglected part. It's like, well, okay, how about a romance instead of like in New York City all the dang time, or London or LA or whatever? Maybe we could do it in Houston. I don't know. Or okay, but I want to. Well, let's focus on you here, Evan. Okay, because I'm getting some
me.
Yeah, you. Okay, I have questions here. All right. I want to know how you would approach this. I mean, okay, I think we have a few solutions here, but I want to know. I mean, as a pastor, I think this does involve. This is important. Okay. The failure to find a spouse and the frustration with living alone. Okay, we have a loneliness epidemic. I think this is really a stumbling block. Not only just for personal fulfillment and, having children and, propagating the human race, but I think people get really sad about this, and then they kind of fall out from going to church and taking their faith seriously. What do you do about this? I mean, I don't even know is this even on the radar? Like, hey, we have a problem with people pairing up, having families, all our congregations are getting pretty old, and, and what do you do as a pastor?
Well, I'll tell you an idea I came up with that everyone in my life just totally poo-pooed, and I thought it was kind of a good idea. It was to host a homeschool speed dating. Okay, so not necessarily high schoolers. I don't necessarily want high schoolers dating, but maybe like 17 and up or something, where people in the homeschool world, and there are Facebook homeschool groups. I mean, there's all kinds of networking that could be done, achieved pretty quickly. But you basically do a speed dating thing, right? Where you do a 5-minute deal and people rotate and you have tables and chairs and, people like each other. There's a secretive way that it can be done. Because again, as I said earlier, like homeschooling is one of it automatically puts you into certain categories. I mean, I have thought that Matt Walsh should start a dating service, because if two people listen to Matt Walsh, they already agree on everything. They already agree on so much. That's the way to do it, is find common interests, and you're most of the way there. So I don't know. I kind of proposed that, and all I got back was, Steve, we don't want to do that. Nobody would show up, and that's a crazy idea. And that's
if you relabeled it,
I'm kind of beaten down.
Well, I mean, if instead of speed dating, right? Well, why don't you say, okay, let's do a dance or a ball or a gala? I don't know, but kind of.
I am working to renovate a ballroom, Adam, down the hall from where we record the other podcast.
The east wing of the church.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do want to do something like that, but I will tell you that there is a. I thought about this. I thought about you. One of your questions was, why don't pastors talk about this sort of thing?
Yeah.
And I thought about this, and it dawned on me that you get beat up if you talk about it a little bit. And so single people beat up on you, because what you're doing is you're normalizing marriage, and you're ostracizing the single people. Okay? Mm-hmm. And Paul was single. Don't you know Paul was single? And so it's like, if you make the single people feel bad if you don't elevate marriage, but of course you want the single people to get married, so that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. But or there are divorced people, okay, or there's widows and widowers, and all of those people, they kind of nag and nip at your heels a little bit. And as someone who kind of has to speak to this wide kind of array of people, you end up neutering this very important message that I agree is important. Or they have kids that are 30 years old and not married and not particularly interested. Maybe playing the field. Maybe living with somebody. Right? And so, I agree that we need to like start staking this out and speaking it and talking about it, talking about the normalization, the goodness of family and all of that. I'm only telling you though that for a lot of public speakers like pastors, if they even have the guts to do so, they will hear from those people. And they will hear from people that say, yeah, I agree marriage is good, but I'm really sad that I'm a widow, or I'm really, I'm single and I can't meet anybody. And then they retreat and they kind of talked about more abstract things. And that's how our public discourse as a whole, including preaching, ends up being pretty neutered, kind of abstract. And people who are willing to transgress boundaries of what pleases people end up being really good public speakers, I think. But that's what often happens.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. Well, and I'm wondering, like, I want to come up with a solution here, and here's what it sounds like. So, more romantic comedies. I think just scolding people from the pulpit is probably not the way to go.
Yeah.
The direct approach, maybe we got to be a little bit more artful. I wonder if we can maybe, and I see this kind of in the Catholic world, and I think the conservative world in general, maybe kind of promote the idea of hosting, kind of hosting gatherings, really being more proactive and building up community. Because even in dating, I mean, before, if a guy, if a young man is like, oh, I want to ask a girl out and I'm scared or whatever, my first question is, do you have friends? Like, he's like, what do you mean? Like, well, do you have bros? Okay, you got to have that security network, that support. And then you can approach a girl with more confidence and, and she's going to pick up on that, and that's going to be an attractive quality. But even if she says no or whatever, it's not going to, it'll roll off your back because, you have that support system. Whereas if you just kind of go alone and you're very vulnerable and you're kind of desperate, it's unattractive and it's going to leave you to kind of crash out after she says no or something. So, I mean, I think we need to return to this idea of not communism, community, okay, hosting, creating occasions for meetups. And, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe just even, like, recognizing the issue.
Yeah, well, I kind of only half joked earlier that we need to talk about the feminism, problem. But yeah, there's a red pill problem too, right? I mean, there is the body count, there is the the ridiculous the Tate brothers and all that kind of crap, right? I mean, so we have issues on the male side too, where there are guys going around talking about how women are trash, they're going to take half your stuff, they're going to divorce you and all that. So you have a lot of defensiveness. I think that's probably maybe that's a change since when I was in college. Just the walls are just sky high. Everybody's just really afraid of getting hurt. And, love requires a lot of vulnerability, which admittedly is not my strong suit, but I had enough of it at one point to pull it off.
That's
it's all gone now. I only needed a little in my 20s. It's all gone now. But I do think that young people generally are a lot more defensive.
Well, I think like Adam was saying, it's the internet. The internet has kind of really kind of nurtured these pathologies, you could say, this kind of neuroticism, this additional fear. I mean, I think sure, this always existed, that you're vulnerable, you're afraid of rejection, blah blah blah. But I think internet has not only deprived us of those third spaces in which matchmaking would happen and introductions would happen, but the internet has also kind of like warped people's brains, okay? I mean, it's addictive, and it kind of saps their libido, it saps their initiative, their drive. And again, it's kind of created this false reality that kind of prevents you from really seeing the other side or even taking a realistic view about like who would be good for you. And also, yeah, and Adam was saying just like the happiness thing, like, okay, that seems to be the messaging. It's, are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? And that's like the worst way to be happy, by the way, is to like keep asking yourself if you're happy. It's going to make you unhappy if you fixate on yourself. Okay, well,
Evan hit on though. I agree with the vulnerability thing. Like I think in order to fall in love with somebody, you've got to be willing to fall in love with them. Like you've got to be able to have a desire to get to know this person. And, I think that's part of what's lost in all things we're talking about, is that there's just not a mindset where you can fall in love. If there were, then I think it would happen. But all of the different factors that we're talking about have people so guarded that it's just not a possibility.
And you mentioned the word cynicism earlier, August, and that is very real. I mean,
yeah.
I do think the culture is extremely cynical. Postmodernism prizes irony, right? I mean, how many times do you see a teenager wearing some stupid Walmart shirt that says something like, sarcasm is my mode today, or something stupid like that, or like, I mean, it's all these t-shirts that kind of celebrate being an asshole, really. I mean, just being sarcastic and, but it's really kind of like the meta category of that is irony, and irony is kind of the death of vulnerability, because nothing is ever serious. Sarcasm, irony, these are just like walls constructed so that no one ever gets to know you. It's just constant deflection. And that's how we pride ourselves in operating in a deflective posture. So let me ask you this, because I actually thought that was really helpful. The Ford thing. I'm not good at acronyms, so I mean, I'm impressed.
Ford,
okay?
yes.
But like, so I'm like, old enough now to where like, if I were to like, God forbid, have to like go on a date again, I mean, I would definitely talk about the pair, like within 5 minutes. Okay, I'd be like, so what do you think about abortion? I want no small talk for me. So
I know, right?
How long before we start talking about those substantial issues?
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Build some trust. Until you build some trust, where you can be vulnerable and sort of accept that other person, they're going to accept what you say on the pair at face value, and see past it. But that's the omnipresence of politics right now, is that it takes a very long time before you can answer any of the pairs, where you can expect somebody's going to respond to that in a generous spirit.
I like that economics is added to that acronym. It's like, I was just thinking of Trump's tariff policies, and it's really pissed me off. But I mean, I guess I would probably do something like that.
I mean, are we talking like microeconomics or like macroeconomics? Because I do think it's like worthwhile, like when you're, I don't know, third date, being like, so tell me about your college debt level. Like, am I marrying into like $100,000 here, like 40,000? I mean, what's your percentage? Is that locked in?
Well, but you are thinking it. Actually, I mean, that's actually what I do appreciate about economics. It's all about behavior. When you approach dating, it's a numbers game, right? It's like your sexual market value. You kind of evaluate yourself at and the different approaches you can take and your return on investment. I mean, these concepts are pretty fluid. I don't know.
I think that's something we've ignored so far, is that you talk about Pride and Prejudice. The class dimension of matching is still present, at least in the middle class and above. I think that still exists, and at least I felt like my parents were never going to tell me that I can't marry the woman I want to marry, but there was sort of a tacit sense of like, do we approve of this match? And I married up, but I think that that is important, because when we're talking about class, we're talking about culture. And the suitability and the viability of the match depend on, do you have the same values? Do you have the same habits? Do you have the same things? And the unfortunate thing, I think, is that in the middle class and lower, it's kind of become anything goes. Like any match is as good as another. And not even just for, like, dating. It's sort of like, childbearing, all other things. And, it might not be bad to sort of, I think Evan was getting at this, bring the family back into, is it a good match?
Yeah.
Well, that's very bourgeois
I think
of you,
so.
Adam. Well, I mean,
I thought when we fought the American Revolution, we got rid of classes and whatnot. Adam, we're all one here.
It's a classless society.
But it brings up an uncomfortable matter. Okay, and I'm going to blame you, Adam, but I think it's worth bringing up that as our society becomes more diverse, and we have the infusion of different types of ethnic backgrounds, traditions, cultures. Diversity, yeah, sure, it's our strength. We can say that. But it does dissolve maybe the connections that we used to have, or the solidarity that a town or a neighborhood might have. It's like, well, beyond just, like, let's say, one of my girlfriends was an Indian girl, and there were barriers I had to overcome to go out with her. I mean, her parents really didn't approve of her dating. We had to kind of do it on the sly. And of course, our expectations were kind of in line with what's important in Indian culture, or, middle-class Indian culture. And had things progressed or gotten serious, then I think there would have been some real problems with, eventually engaging and marrying and all that. And it didn't work out. But, I'm wondering, like, okay, whereas in the past, you lived in a more homogenous kind of area with people of your class, people of your race, people of your background. And maybe it was a little bit, there was just a bigger field of potential spouses, mates. But now it's like, well, okay, the only other, white middle-class people in my circle here are just like this person and this person. The rest of them are like, well, they're other races and they kind of do things differently. And do you think that has had an impact on maybe kind of younger generations having a harder time maybe finding the person of their dreams?
I actually think it's opened it up.
Okay.
In the past, there were certain boundaries that couldn't be crossed, whether that's race or, culture, religion. I think that I'm in favor of the permissiveness of the culture in allowing people to marry for romantic love. I think that perhaps we've just gotten the lack of concern for the potential future of this match has gotten so low, that I think that it enables bad matches. But I think that, when two people love each other, and I think that there are long-term marital relationships that can transcend these cultural boundaries, and it's just a match thing. I hate to get romantic where the night before,
yeah, gosh, I'm about to gag here.
but when I walked into that library, I looked at that girl and immediately I said, that's where it's at. And to her account, she said the same thing. I had hair back then, but
whatever. You said that she said stop stalking me or something.
That's not what she said. She said okay. I wanted you to call me.
Oh, okay.
That was after they got married and had kids. Okay.
Yeah.
But I really do, you know, like I believe in love at first sight. I think it's a sort of mystical quality, and I'm not sure that everybody can experience that, but I think it exists, and I think that that when it happens, if you nurture and tend that, I think that that's a sign that this could be forever, right? Is that there was something immediately before you talked, before anything else, that said to you, this is real.
Yeah, I mean, she likes Matt Walsh. I like Matt Walsh. You know, and you know, it just clicks. You know.
I don't know. I'm kind of two minds on this. I of course, I'm open to any two people falling in love. That's fine. Whatever. Ethnicity, from a Christian worldview, ethnicity really doesn't matter at all. We're one in Christ and all of that. However, and I'm reminded that Jeremy Carl yesterday was booted out of the Trump, he was voted, out of the Trump administration. Never happened. Never going to join the Trump administration because he's a white nationalist. Yeah, he lost, right? Because he's basically saying there is this thing. There's a Venn diagram of what we call whiteness and then what we call sort of particular American values. Irish or Scottish or English, ethnicity produces certain values. There's a kind of fencing around certain ideologies and, values that form a good family, because it's intuitive that we're going to raise our kids the same way, that we have the same values about how to spend money, what kind of a home we should buy. I mean, not uniformly, but certainly in the past, it was a lot more uniform than it would be today. Or, passing on genes. Is it wrong to say that? I mean, I'm going to be transgressive and say, no, I don't think so. My wife has red hair. Only about 1 or 2% of the world's population has red hair. August, you have a brother that has red hair. Yeah. And that was one of my selling points. Your brother's red hair was literally one of my selling points to my wife. Because I said, it's in my genes. All right? If it's in his genes, it's in my genes too. That means our kids could have red hair, and maybe it skips a generation, but they have red hair. Now, is it wrong for me? Would it be wrong for her to want to have redheaded grandchildren, other than the fact that they might get picked on? Other than that, would that be wrong? No, it's not wrong, damn it. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting your kids or your grandkids to look like you, right? And then marrying someone and even facilitating your kids' marriages that end up in that way. Now, does that mean interracial marriage is wrong? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's also not wrong that part of our attraction and part of our dating might be that someone who looks like us, we intuit has our values, which, by the way, Chinese people agree with, Vietnamese people agree with, Korean people agree with, Italians agree with. Everyone thinks this way. It's only, and by the way, this is a tie-in to the Olympics. Only America has this melting pot, this true melting pot, where like people from all over the world, of all kinds of ethnicities and races, are truly American. At least that's what we thought before these Olympics. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I alternate point of view.
Well, no, I mean, I think you're kind of getting to what I was kind of putting forward, Evan. I mean, yes, like Adam says, we can, transcend these barriers and we can make common cause and fall in love with whatever color, whatever background. But then again, more likely we're going to be attracted to people who are similar to us. And at least at some level, we do want to have, descendants who kind of carry on some of the qualities that make us unique, I guess, if you want to put it in a nice way. So, I mean, I wonder if it, on the net level, is it a net positive or maybe a net negative on just the impact of a diversifying demographic? Do you have just kind of like a balkanization of a community, and so you have just less, again, occasions to meet up the other sex, and there's just kind of understandings of just not going certain places? Or is the melting pot really melting together and we're all just kind of meeting each other and the cards fall where they may and whatever? I don't know. I mean, and that could give you a complex issue. I didn't know about the Jeremy Carl thing, actually. I saw like a video of him, and he was kind of fumbling. I mean, he got kind of pelted with the question, "Are you a white nationalist? What is whiteness?" Da 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 da. And so, I mean, what did they just not nominate him for? What was the role?
It looks like he's not going to get the votes, right? And so,
have they had the vote yet, though, or he's just got questioned?
Well, I guess I'm not 100% sure, but the headlines I saw were it's over, but that it's not going to happen. So he's not going to make it out of committee or whatever the case is. And, to be fair, I mean, his book is about, specifically anti-white, persecution or,
discrimination.
Maybe discrimination.
Yeah.
And it's not a popular take to make at this point. And yet, it's pretty much the most prominent by far, discrimination that's taking place. But it's still a thing that kind of in some ways cannot be said. So I think that's...
Okay. Well, I mean, I was just kind of curious because, as I said, I just kind of caught a little bit of that. And, I mean...
Well, let's put it this way, okay? Like, if a white person says, I'll only marry a white person... That's bad. If a black person says I'll only marry a black person, everyone's like, well, of course.
Okay, yeah.
That's my only, I mean, I don't want to do the kind of hypocrisy thing. That's kind of passé, but I guess what I'm saying is like that is pretty normal. Like historically people, like Adam was talking about, like historically people kind of, that's why we have the phrase marrying up. Right, because there was this like idea that like you kind of probably are going to end up with someone of your equal status. Your earning potential, your intelligence level, your looks. That's just kind of how it works, and that's fine. But every now and then, some of us get lucky. And we marry up. And we kind of overachieve. So
well. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny when Adam was talking. Besides, kind of gagging a little bit. I thought I was just kind of thinking, such a white thing to say. I don't know.
Adam's such a romantic.
Well, I mean, like you say, Evan, I'm not sure if this is kind of a shared a shared vision, I guess, among other, other races or other ethnic communities. I mean, I think they do kind of want to preserve their heritage and. Yeah, I mean, just their kind of their bloodline.
Well, you just said the Indian parents, they didn't want you around.
Oh, yeah. We were studying. It's all good. Right? Don't worry, man.
I think, the advice that I give to any young men who are watching this is, I don't know if people still know the show Deal or No Deal, but it's like you have to evaluate what are my chances of getting something better than I have right now versus keeping what I have right now? And I sort of think of the choice of a life partner in that sense. And what this depends on is know thyself, right? You need to know who you are, right? And then knowing, when you've maximized your chances. And I will boast that, when I was on the relationship Deal or No Deal, I pressed the button at exactly the right time. I maxed out my potential.
Is that the no whammies, no whammy stop game? I don't remember.
No, I remember Deal No Deal. Yeah, I remember that show vaguely. That was back when there were a lot of games.
Like they had 30 suitcases or something, and one had $1 million. And they'd open one by one, and you had to decide: am I going to take the highest value that's open so far, or am I going to go higher?
You could take the 40 grand, or you could risk the next one might be $1 million, but it might be $2.
That's right.
So if he said, gotcha.
It depends on know thyself, right? You have to know where you can max it out.
My wife always says that men date when they're ready, and men marry when they're ready, and women marry when they find the right guy, kind of thing. It's kind of an interesting observation because men are kind of like interested in like the externals kind of working out, and women are kind of like the person, and it's so So a good marriage maybe, is when those two things meet,
Well, Evan, actually, that's an interesting point, because I was listening to a podcast today, Pints with Aquinas, and it was Matt Fradd talking to apologist Trent Horn, who I think you kind of had on a debate or something.
Yeah, he's debated at my church twice.
Yeah, the guy's brilliant. And but they were talking. Well, Trent Horn brought up this point, and it is something I've started picking up on, is that the younger generation, at least Gen Z, they are really sensitive about like age differences, and so and this has kind of become problematic. So if you're like even just 3 years or more older than the girl or the woman, like, oh my gosh, you're robbing the cradle and the power dynamics are all skewed and this is wrong. And it's kind of absurd. It gets to that degree. But they were kind of making the point, and I'll echo what Trent Horn kind of says, is that, look, men need more time. They need to kind of get established, and they might not be in a secure position to just kind of propose marriage and start a home with a woman. And so, I mean, and that's the expectation anyway, is that a man can provide and have that, bring that security. But that requires some degree of maturity and age. And sometimes it's just not physically possible to, be a young man who's the same age as a young woman. Maybe y'all are just about to end college and things work out. I mean, it helps to have a little bit, a year or two more. I mean, again, it's not always going to be that way, but I don't know. There seems to be like some nervousness or agitation about, oh my gosh, the man has to be within this tiny kind of window of age or comparability to the woman. I don't know. Have you seen that?
So, well, I thought maybe we were going to talk about Epstein now or something, but no.
Oh no!
Just kidding. But I will say this though. Like, it was not uncommon. So I'm reading a couple of books about early American history, and it was not uncommon. Like James Madison, I think the fourth president. I mean, at one point he was engaged to a girl who was 15, and he was like in his early 30s. I mean, it was frowned upon, but it wasn't like pedophilia or something like that either. I mean, it was allowed. So yeah, I think I've known a number of Africans, for example. Like someone I know from Nigeria, and I keep teasing him, like, when are you going to start dating people? He's like, no, I have to be totally set in my career. I have to own a house. I have to have a car. I think it's very normal in other cultures for the men to be 35, 40 before they marry, and then they'll marry a far younger woman. So I think it's because they understand it's an economic arrangement as much as anything else.
I'll say this, I do think I saw a thing on X, and it was a woman asking, how long do you have to have been dating a man before you ask him for money? And this puzzled me, right? Because I've never had a woman ask me for money. And when my wife and I met, I was 20 and a half years old. She was 17 and a half years old, right? Not a huge age difference.
Sure.
I don't think, right? And I think after 26 years, I've proved that my motivations were decent and noble. But, like, I would advise young people, right? Get married and find someone before they can ask you for money. I had nothing. I had nothing. And also, credit to my mother-in-law, who inexplicably, retrospectively, did not freak out about this relationship and recognized that there was something real there, and allowed it to take its course. I think there's really something to be said for not delaying the possibility of a long-term match.
Well, that reminds me of something, and I'm going to credit Charles Murray, who I think is in one of his books or articles. It wasn't about bell curves and IQs, which he's known for. It was just kind of like a curmudgeon's guide to the world or something. And he says there's two different kinds of marriages. There's the startup marriage, where you're both young, you really don't have much, and you grow up together. I mean, you really do kind of, it's a complementary relationship, but, and then, but you don't have anything. You're building up together, so it's a startup, And then you have the merger, where you're both a little bit older, you're more established, and you're kind of merging your assets, and those tend to be a little bit more difficult because you're having to reconcile quite a few differences, and you're at a point in your life where it's harder to kind of be flexible and adapt. Whereas if you're at the age you're talking about, and it was the same for me. I met my wife when I was like 19. Eventually got married pretty young, and then we've been together ever since. But it was a startup marriage, And, she was with me as I was getting certification, as I was a substitute teacher. And, I mean, it's nothing anybody would recommend. I mean, it went against my bourgeois values, kind of being established and doing things in proper order. But it worked out just because I think there's a lot of power in a startup marriage that I think doesn't get a lot of credit. Even though, a lot of times this stuff can work out. I mean, again, but it helps to, have some experience and have, again, that support around you. So I had my family's support to make it work and just kind of been inculcated with good Christian values of being committed. I want to move to the Olympics, y'all. Okay? Enough of this lovey-dovey stuff. I think we've given some good advice and some food for thought here. First, I'll ask Evan first. I mean, I'm a little afraid to ask. Has anybody been watching the Olympics? Evan, have you been watching the Olympics?
No. Sorry, but I did watch the movie Miracle about the 1980 U.S. hockey team, and then I watched a documentary about it with a reunion 45 years later, and I started to watch an ESPN 30 for 30. Which tells the Russian side of the story, but I haven't finished that yet. So I'm really getting to know the 1980 U.S. hockey team, which included a guy with the last name of McClanahan.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's that.
Okay.
But no, I haven't watched it. Part of it is like, I don't have cable. Okay, we stream everything we watch. It's like a whole thing to watch, like, NBC. Okay, I have to get the antenna out. I have to put it in the window. Okay, so the digital stream comes through. I have to tell my TV to go to the TV mode, not the streaming mode. Anyway, I'm kind of joking, but yeah, we actually have thought about it a few times. Like, let's put on the Olympics. And then we're like, nah, we'll just stream the shows we're watching. And that's actually kind of makes me sad.
All right.
I vividly remember as a teenager, like, watching the Olympics. I mean, I only had 3 channels at the time, and I remember being enthralled with it and watching, the speed races and even the figure skating. I mean, I appreciate the skill of doing something like that. I remember Oksana Bayul. Bayul when I was a teenager. It's funny. She's a friend of my mother's because she lives in my hometown now. Funnily enough, she's very politically active. So, yeah, it's a small world, huh? Anyway, I just remember that, and I remember thinking, like, that was all cool. And now it's like, I don't know, but maybe part of it is that I'm cynical, right? I think they all have a bunch of bad attitudes, and they don't, but a lot of them do, enough of them do, and it makes me like, well, it off-puts me, So, anyway, that probably doesn't help the
generation of athletes, man. They're spunky, and they don't like their country. Adam, have you been watching any of it?
I'm a big fan of the Winter Olympics.
Yeah,
wow.
Okay.
All right,
Tell us all about it.
I prefer the Winter Olympics to the Summer Olympics. And honestly, I think that the Winter Olympics are for northern people.
Man.
I grew up in Western New York State, and if we're talking about romance, there's something deeply romantic about the winter sports. I too find obnoxious that people are taking photographs and posting them of themselves peeing in snow. But
Hey, wait. Dude, there's no way. Nobody has that kind of control. Okay, that dude did not. He did not cuss out ICE like the agency with his urine.
You're probably right.
I don't know how he did it, but it wasn't peeing. But go ahead.
But I am pumped about the Olympics. I am a big hockey fan, and the Russians are not fielding a team this Olympics. And so anything less than a USA-Canada gold medal round, I think, will be a disappointment.
You know, it bothers me that Russia is... I mean, who are we kidding, man? I mean, they're the big player. They've always been, even in the Summer Olympics. And because there's this conflict in Ukraine that's just been going on forever. And
I haven't even read what the reason is, but I think that, entering into Olympic hockey, especially if NHL players are playing, Canada's expectation is gold. And then it kind of, who's above, Russia or the United States? And I got to say, the United States looked real sharp yesterday against Latvia, so...
To connect some dots, one of the 1980 hockey players, Mike Ezroni, yeah. So, he tweeted pretty vociferously against these whiners, right? These kids over there, and he basically said, "Hey, the letters on the front of your jersey are more important than the ones on your back, right?" And that is a theme of the Miracle on Ice movie, by the way, which is actually a pretty good movie for Disney. Kurt Russell actually acts in it. It's kind of amazing. But that's kind of an interesting clash of cultures. It kind of is a symbol. If you look at, say, 1980s, kind of Midwestern white guys, exclusively by definition, and Northeastern white guys, right, that made up that team. And kind of the grit and everything they brought to that, that event. And now they're complaining about the young kids who are representing their country while talking about how horrible ICE is. And by ICE, given the double meaning, we're talking about the immigration and customs enforcement. And so I do think it's kind of interesting. But yeah, it does bring up questions of can we be proud to be Americans still? I mean, or do we just have to be negative about that too? It's back to the dating thing.
You know what?
We can't just love anything anymore.
I'll say this. I follow some, kind of Catholic voices on X. And apparently there are a lot of proud Christians that are competing and they're Americans. And so that is heartening to see. I feel like they're more outspoken than even, in the past. They give thanks to Jesus, thanks to God, and so that's kind of cool. I like to see that. Obviously, you're going to have some douchebags that are I don't know if I can represent. It's just hard sometimes to represent my country and ski. Dude. Well,
the curling guy who's a lawyer, and he's like, "Hey, we really need the Fourth Amendment working for the immigrant here." I'm like, dude, this is not a constitutional crisis, class you're teaching, okay?
Just like we were talking about with matchmaking, you've got to be willing to fall in love and overlook some things, right? The affinity for the nation on our part as fans needs to trump the idiots who are not rising to the occasion. You got to be willing to fall in love with the U.S. Olympic team.
That's not where I thought you were going. I thought what you were going to say, Adam, is we need to screen out these un-American a-holes. Why isn't that a part? Okay.
You're already there.
So, you're a really good skier or skater or curler, but do you love America? You want to wrap yourself in this flag like Rocky at the end of Rocky 4 or what? Okay? Because I will accept nothing less.
Well, I think what bothers me more, though, they're going to make their little protest or whatever. I don't know why I'm bothered by this, because, business is business, but these athletes who grow up here, live here, speak English, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to represent China. The Eileen Gu, I don't know how you say the last name, Gu.
I agree. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's just a Bay Area, California girl, okay? And I think her event is like kind of freestyle skiing. Is that where they do tricks and stuff?
Look. Here's the problem already. We have too many events. Okay, we just make crap up and we're like, it's an Olympic sport. Freestyle skiing is not a sport. It's not real.
I think the doubles luge where they're just piled on top of each other. Like,
what is that?
You have to be willing to fall in love.
Gosh, man, we got a little sappy Adam here who's just like, oh, yeah, man, this is great. It's just like my childhood.
I agree, though, that Eileen Gu is, well, essentially what it is privilege. That's what's going on there, is privilege. And it's an ostentatious display of privilege, which makes it all the less palatable.
Well, what kind of privilege does she have? Does she have American privilege, female privilege, Chinese privilege? What? Athletic privilege?
All of the above. All of the above, right? And more than anything, a class privilege, where she can, elect to signal the things that she's trying to signal by skiing for China.
Could she also ski for America?
But
does she have? She has dual citizenship or what?
Yes, she.
Yeah.
She's an anchor baby. Okay, well this also brings up that story that came out. Like Peter Schweitzer, is that his name? Has written a book about this, where like hundreds of thousands of Chinese people have had their children born in America.
Oh yeah.
They're raised in China, and at some point they're going to be able to vote as American citizens. So the whole birthright citizenship maybe ties into this in some way. Maybe it's in reverse, though. So she's...
Her mother is Chinese.
She's mixed race. She looks white.
Oh, yeah. But the thing is the test is, okay, you want to compete for China and go live in China. Well, no, I'm good at Stanford.
Well,
how do we allow this? I want a law banning this now.
But I guess what gets me though, and you're right, Adam. I think you're right. There's an element of privilege. I mean, she is a progressive from Northern California, probably comes from wealth. Has her pick of how she wants to play this. And has the gall. Just again has the privilege to just kind of speak out. Because it's not only that she sold out her country and she's working for the Chi-Coms. But, she has the gall to, comment and I think be critical of Trump and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's insufferable.
The worst part of it is that our American media covers her as if she's an American.
Yeah, no.
That's
the part that really gets me.
I will say this. I think about years ago when China hosted the Summer Olympics, I believe. They did this massive opening ceremony with 5,000 drummers or something.
Yep,
and I remember David Brooks kind of was like, wow, this is amazing. And what he said was ultimately probably stupid, but he wasn't totally wrong. Okay, so he was kind of elevating the virtues of well, this is what you can do in a country that's actually communist, right? But, he's not totally wrong. What America seems to lack is just basic pride in being American. We just hate ourselves. And anytime these are opportunities to just flex on the world, because we do have the best athletes, right? And we are the most powerful, in many ways, the most wonderful nation on earth. And yet we just hate ourselves. We doubt ourselves. We second guess ourselves. We're ashamed. We're embarrassed. And I am envious of the pride that the Chinese have in China. And by China, it's really not the CCP. It's actually the 5,000 years of history that they actually have. I'm jealous of the pride that the Russians have. Not in Vladimir Putin, but the frickin' centuries of badassery that Russia has produced, you know? And like all these countries, even like they haven't produced a lot, you know? Like maybe they're like a mid-tier Eastern European country, but damn it, they love their country. And I'm kind of like jealous of that, you know? Like why is it so hard to like your own country?
Well, you know what I think figures into it? The Winter Olympics especially, these are privileged people. Like Adam goes, they're rich. It's hard to like
because you have to ski and stuff. So, right? I mean, like you have to have a mountain.
Yeah, I mean, who we're really commenting on is kind of a wealthier class of individuals. Okay, so I mean, if you're looking at like Winter Olympic athletes, a lot of them we would consider part of the elite class of people.
Interesting.
Who could who could go ski at Aspen or whatever. And I mean, even just getting the tools and joining these clubs and leagues, it's expensive.
I love to ski, and I get to take my family to ski about once every 2 years because the cost is so prohibitive.
Exactly. Well, so you're denying them the opportunity to be Olympic athletes. Thank you, Adam. They could have been curlers, but he's just too poor. So
yeah, son Ellwanger could be the next downhill Super G. Whatever, but you're not taking him to Colorado enough, dude.
Adam, we'll try. Well, when we get big and I make my millions, I'm going to say, I want to make Adam's kids' dreams come true.
My children.
Well, it's never too late for you either if you want to do, couples curling or whatever. Yeah. But no, I mean, but I think when we're thinking about this, I don't know if they're very representative of America in general. Okay. I think we're talking about a class of people that are pretty insulated from, I think, a lot of the issues and, themes that kind of give the American identity definition or whatever. So, I mean, I think in the Summer Olympics, I don't sense this as much. I mean, even the last one in Paris, you had all the gay stuff because it's France and they're weird. But, I mean, the athletes themselves, I think they were just pretty straightforward. They support, they represent the track and field athletes. They were all pretty good people. And I didn't get this type of like, I'm cool and I can't like be too praising of my own country. And I mean, I think it's more of a symptom of the privilege that these people are living in. So that's why
it's really interesting. I've never thought about that. That the majority of our Winter Olympics athletes are going to be from states like New York.
Yeah, they're just spoiled. These are just spoiled people. You know.
Whereas the Summer Olympic sports are going to be maybe people more from the South. I mean, a lot of track and field. I mean, my son plays baseball, and I mean, it's pretty much the dream of any high school baseball player to play in the SEC.
Has it always been a thing? I mean, I know. I think I think it's a woman who's kind of like, she's gay, okay, and she wraps herself with the rainbow flag, and she talks about the queer community. I mean, I assume she's gay, but maybe not. Maybe she's gender fluid or whatever. I thought this stuff was passé. Am I wrong, Evan? Is this stuff alive and well? I mean, I thought this culture war I thought we had victory in our vision here.
So I had a class in college. It was music appreciation. I was a music major, so it was like a high level class. Maybe it was like history of Western music or something. Anyway, the guy taught the South Park song, "What Would Brian Boitano Do?" I don't know if you remember that. Look it up.
He's a Canadian South Park song, right? Was he gay?
What would Brian? Yeah, I mean, come on,
I mean,
well, yeah, it's like
about that anymore. I don't know.
I'm with you. It's like it does bring up kind of a can of worms, right? But let's just walk in time, right? Okay, Obergefell legalized gay marriage. What happened? Immediately, transgenderism entered the social consciousness. And the idea that gay people don't have rights in this country is absurd. And it basically, you have to wonder if these people care or pay attention, or if trying to meet them halfway was a mistake. Because what has it gotten us? I mean, they can get married. they have all the rights as anyone else. They can will their estate to one another.
What's the rainbow flag even mean anymore? I mean,
and the joke, of course, is that they keep adding to it, right? The progress flag. The joke I always think about, it's actually not a joke, it's a true story of a guy that painted his house, a rainbow, right? Went all the way around his house, painted it a rainbow, and literally on social media, like the first comment was, "Yeah, well, we don't use that flag anymore." It's like the dude gave up his whole house to the rainbow flag, but it doesn't have the trans triangle, right? And it doesn't have the circle, and it doesn't have the hammer and sickle or whatever the crap they're putting on it. The broader picture, I think, is this fundamental problem of identifying oneself with what kind of sex you have. I think we need to be blunt that this is really not an appropriate or an acceptable definer of who you are. It's actually kind of a tragic definer of who you are. Like we should be about more than that, right? So it's just totally turned. I mean, I have no interest in watching Broadway plays because the last time I saw anything with Broadway, all I thought was, this is so gay. I mean, I have to leave now. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I think we all know most of the male, not all. I mean, you can be a male. You ever seen, for example, the movie Phantom Thread?
No, I was thinking the Will Ferrell movie, Blades of Glory or something.
Oh, okay. Well, Daniel Day-Lewis plays a clothing designer, like a style designer.
Okay, I've read about it.
It's worth watching. It's great. It's about obsession. I love it. But, yeah, it's like most people are gay in certain fields. We don't care.
But,
why do they have to rub our face in it?
I mean, I guess going back to the Olympics, I guess the irony or tragedy here is that the Olympics is supposed to kind of broaden your vision of everything, right? I mean, it's supposed to bring the world together, and you're supposed to kind of overcome maybe the hostility you have to other people, other types of people. I guess it kind of saddens me that, instead of taking this broad-minded, brotherhood of man, and we're all joined together in sport, as it was originally intended by Pierre Coubertin, who made the first modern Olympics. I don't know. It just seems to become a platform for just various identity groups and grievances. It saddens me. Adam, make me happy. Is there still the Olympic spirit somewhere among these people?
All I could say to what you just said is that's the spirit of the age. Again, it's the self, right?
Okay.
And the self will transcend everything. Any national spirit, any global sentiments, all of that is secondary. It's still there. It's just secondary, and it has to be for a million reasons.
Well, I'm thinking about Putin's critiques of the West. I mean, in all seriousness, right? Russia's not there. What does he say? He says the West is decadent, the West is gay. Now, Russia has its own cultural problems, to be clear, like abortion and pornography and other, a lot of it. They have problems too. But, it's kind of like I'm pretty sympathetic when other people criticize the West for being decadent and lascivious and pornographic and things like that. I mean, like one of the headlines that came out of the Olympics was that the 10,000 condoms supplied to the Olympic Village are already gone after like 4 days or something. So that's what the Olympic athletes are up to. So I don't know, man.
They're partying at the Olympic level. That's the moral of the story. Okay, Cody Miller said it for all time. I think we'll end it there. Evan's got to catch the half-pipe snowboard final, and Adam's got to keep up with the next round of skeleton, which is like luge, except even more insane since the sledders are going head first. And I got to see how my girls are doing in women's hockey, because that's all they show on TV. And apparently we got to beat Italy, and then it's the Swedes in the finals. As always, thank you guys for coming on. Okay, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Everyman Substack and share it with your Valentine. Until next time, tell that special someone in your life that you love them and do something fun. Keep rooting for Team USA despite some dummies in the mix. Keep the faith and get ready for Lent. and go in peace.